The gym was buzzing with energy. Martial artists, fans, and a few curious onlookers were scattered around, watching fighters practice and spar. But one pair in the corner instantly drew attention. Michael Jai White, the confident, ever-determined martial artist, had just spotted Steven Seagal. Michael wasn't known for holding back. He approached with a focused intensity, eyes locked on Seagal. There was a challenge in his stance, a subtle swagger that screamed, "I've got this." The crowd noticed immediately. Whispers spread through the room. Is he really going to challenge Seagal? And this could get interesting. Everyone instinctively leaned in closer. The tension was palpable. Michael took a step forward, raising his fists slightly, not in aggression, but in a display of confidence. "I wanted to test myself against someone like you," he said, voice calm, yet commanding. The statement wasn't just for Seagal, it was for the entire room. He wanted to prove himself. Seagal, on the other hand, barely flinched. Calm as ever, he observed Michael, evaluating every movement with a seasoned eye. There was no smirk, no flare of anger, just a quiet, almost unnerving composure. And that's exactly what made the moment so electrifying. The contrast between Michael's energy and Seagal's calm was almost magnetic, pulling every eye in the room toward the two fighters. Michael's mind raced. He had trained for years, mastering his strikes and counters, and he believed he could handle Seagal. Yet something about Seagal's presence made him hesitate, even for a fraction of a second. It was the kind of hesitation you don't notice at first, but in martial arts, a split second can be everything. The crowd held its collective breath. Phones were raised, ready to capture whatever was about to happen. Everyone felt it. This wasn't just a casual sparring moment. Something big was about to unfold. And then came the words that made every head in the room snap toward the center. Michael Jai White challenges Steven Seagal. 5 seconds later, he regrets it. The statement alone was enough to trap the audience mentally. Viewers in the gym, and eventually those watching online, couldn't help but ask themselves, what happens in those 5 seconds? How can someone regret a challenge so fast? That question would hang in the air, unspoken but impossible to ignore. And that's exactly how the trap was set, the mental hook that no one could escape. The atmosphere in the gym was electric. Every eye was on Michael Jai White and Steven Seagal. Michael's muscles were tense, ready for action, while Seagal stood there like a stone statue, calm, collected, and utterly unreadable. That calmness was unsettling to everyone watching. Michael circled, testing distance, watching for any slight reaction from Seagal. He had faced dozens of opponents before, each testing his skill, speed, and strategy. But none of them had carried the aura that Seagal had. The older martial arts master wasn't moving quickly, wasn't flinching, wasn't showing the slightest hint of fear or aggression. And yet, Michael could feel the weight of Seagal's presence pressing on him. He squared up, throwing a light jab to gauge his opponent's reaction. Seagal didn't move a muscle. Not a twitch, not a step, not even a flicker in his eyes. The crowd held their breath. Michael tried again, this time a faster strike, more precise, but again, Seagal didn't respond. Instead, he simply shifted ever so slightly, just enough to avoid a perfect line of attack. A whisper ran through the onlookers. He's too calm, too controlled. Michael's confidence wavered for the first time. He had been so sure that he could dominate this encounter. He had underestimated how unsettling a calm, experienced opponent could be. That calm wasn't weakness. It was a shield, a trap, a statement in itself. The crowd began murmuring among themselves, recording with phones. Every small move was magnified. Michael's confidence had carried him through countless battles, but this was different. Seagal's stillness wasn't passive, it was deliberate, almost like he was daring Michael to make a mistake. And in martial arts, mistakes are costly. Michael tried to read Seagal, to anticipate the subtle cues, but there were none. It was a mental game as much as a physical one. Every strike he prepared in his mind now felt like a gamble. The faster he moved, the slower time seemed. Every breath he took was measured. The gym seemed to shrink, the crowd's eyes pressing on him like a tangible weight. It was in this tension that the first engagement moment arrives for the viewers. Have you ever underestimated someone based on their calmness? Tell me about it below. Think about it. Michael was confident, trained, and skilled. Yet he was facing the invisible power of composure. That's a lesson for anyone watching. Calmness can be a weapon. In life, in martial arts, and even in everyday challenges, the quiet ones are often the most dangerous. The tension was almost unbearable. Michael's strikes became more hesitant. Each movement he made was calculated but cautious. He couldn't afford to commit too soon, couldn't risk showing desperation. Seagal remained like a still lake, seemingly serene, but with ripples only a trained eye could detect. Finally, Michael took a deep breath, preparing for a larger move, something decisive. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. Phones recorded, jaws dropped. Everyone could feel that something monumental was about to happen, and they all knew that in mere seconds, the entire dynamic would shift dramatically. The challenge had reached its peak. The calmness of Seagal wasn't just unsettling, it was mentally trapping Michael, forcing him to doubt every move, every strike, every thought. And that's exactly how the mental trap works. Confidence meets composure, and suddenly, the challenger begins questioning everything. The stage was set for the moment that would leave Michael Jai White and the entire audience reeling. The gym was silent now, save for the faint scrape of shoes on mats and the barely audible hum of the air conditioning. Michael Jai White had circled Seagal several times, testing range, timing, and reaction. Every move he had made so far had been met with nothing more than Seagal's calm, measured gaze. That stillness was unnerving, and the weight of it pressed on Michael's shoulders. Finally, Michael decided it was time to act. He feinted a quick jab, then launched a low, fast kick aimed at Seagal's midsection. The crowd collectively leaned in, phones held high, breaths held. Michael's eyes were locked on his opponent, every muscle taut, every intention clear. He thought he was in control, and then it happened. Seagal barely shifted, not out of weakness, but because he didn't need to. With a subtle pivot of his hips, he redirected Michael's kick almost effortlessly, using the motion to destabilize Michael without throwing a single strike. It wasn't just skill, it was an almost supernatural understanding of movement and timing. The crowd gasped. Some whispered, "Did he just barely move?" Others simply shook their heads, stunned. Michael's jaw tightened. He had underestimated Seagal's calmness, mistaking it for hesitation. Now, that calm was an invisible wall he couldn't breach. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. He had trained for years, faced champions, fought multiple styles, but none of that prepared him for an opponent whose control was so absolute, whose patience was unshakable. He stepped back, regaining composure, and tried again, a quicker punch aimed at Seagal's torso. The master barely flinched, sidestepping with a grace that seemed almost casual. Every attempt Michael made to force a reaction was met with nothing more than subtle deflections, minimal movement, and a sense of effortless mastery. The crowd's anticipation grew with each failed attempt. It was at this moment the mental tension began to spiral. Michael's mind raced. Why isn't he reacting? Is he letting me make a mistake? Am I moving too fast? Too slow? Every thought became a calculation. Every breath was a countdown. The audience could feel his internal struggle, even without seeing it. And then the engagement moment hits, designed to trap the viewer in the story. What would you have done in Michael's shoes? Would you keep pushing or step back? Comment your reaction below. This isn't just a question, it's a subtle psychological hook. Viewers are forced to imagine themselves in Michael's position, feeling the pressure, experiencing the doubt, and mentally replaying the tension. It deepens emotional investment and keeps eyes glued to the screen. Michael tried one more move, a rapid combination of punches and kicks designed to overwhelm Seagal. But the older master's calm remained unbroken. He absorbed, redirected, and subtly guided Michael off balance without breaking a sweat. Every failed attempt chipped away at Michael's initial confidence. He could feel the eyes of the crowd pressing down, recording every moment, witnessing his growing frustration. The psychological tension wasn't just on Michael. It extended to everyone watching. The gym felt like a pressure cooker. The anticipation was unbearable. Viewers could almost feel themselves leaning forward, imagining the next seconds, mentally trapped in the unfolding drama. Michael's chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat dotted his forehead. He had realized something crucial. Underestimating Seagal's calmness was his first, and perhaps greatest, mistake. That calmness wasn't passive. It was the ultimate weapon. As he prepared for yet another move, a flicker of hesitation crossed his mind. The seconds felt longer, heavier. The crowd's murmurs grew. Phones continued recording, and Michael could feel the subtle shift. The initial confidence that carried him in had begun to crumble. This was the moment of escalation. Michael Jai White had challenged Seagal, and now the true test was clear. Could he overcome an opponent whose composure and mastery seemed almost untouchable? Or would he be humbled, in front of the world, in mere seconds? Michael Jai White's confidence had been unshakable for years. He had faced some of the toughest fighters in the world, mastering a variety of martial arts styles, and every opponent had eventually bent to his skill. But now, standing in front of Steven Seagal, something felt different. The first moves had already rattled him. Seagal's calm, precise, almost effortless counters had thrown Michael off his rhythm. The crowd was silent now, leaning forward, holding their breath, sensing the shift in momentum. Phones hovered in midair, capturing every micro-expression on Michael's face. Sweat glistened on his forehead, but his eyes were locked on Seagal, trying to read any subtle hint of weakness. And then the whispers began. Someone at the back gasped audibly, "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" Another voice added, "The legend himself? This is insane." The murmurs spread like wildfire. Heads turned, eyes widened, and the energy in the room shifted. It wasn't just Michael who felt the tension. The entire crowd suddenly realized the magnitude of the moment. The man he had challenged wasn't just any martial artist. He was a living legend, a master of Aikido and years of experience that had already humbled countless challengers. Michael's mind raced. Every strike he had thrown, every feint, every calculated movement now felt fragile against Seagal's presence. He realized, almost simultaneously with the crowd, just how steep the hill he had decided to climb truly was. The calmness Seagal had shown wasn't hesitation. It was an unshakable command of his own power. Every second that Michael had thought he was in control now felt like a misstep. The whispers grew louder. 5 seconds in, and he's already being tested. People shook their heads, some even chuckling nervously. The room was electric with anticipation, mentally drawing viewers into the unfolding drama. This wasn't just a fight. It was a lesson being played out in real time. Michael tried to recover, circling again, attempting a new combination. But the longer he watched Seagal, the more he realized the futility of rushing. His mind flashed through his training, his experience, the countless fights he had won. And yet none of that mattered in the presence of this calm, deliberate mastery. The weight of the realization hit him like a physical blow. Every instinct, every reflex, every burst of confidence was being countered by something deeper than skill. It was patience, control, years of mastery that didn't need to impress, only to command. For the audience, this was the perfect mental hook. They could feel Michael's doubt creeping in, could empathize with the sudden internal panic, and their own anticipation intensified. Questions flooded their minds. How does he respond? Will he recover? Or is this the moment of regret? Michael's breathing quickened. His hands tensed. The realization wasn't just in his mind. It reflected in his stance, in the subtle hesitation that now marked every move. He had underestimated Seagal's calmness, and for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to face someone whose mastery transcended flash and bravado. And just like that, the moment crystallized. The whispering crowd, the focused cameras, the wide eyes of bystanders, all fed into the mental trap. Michael's confidence, once towering, now wavered. Seconds earlier, he had believed he could challenge Seagal. Now, every fiber of his being screamed caution. The audience watching this online felt the tension in their own minds. The drama wasn't just physical, it was psychological. They were trapped in Michael's thought process, feeling his doubt, sensing the power of Seagal's stillness, and bracing for the inevitable moment of regret. That moment, the instant of recognition and humility, was coming. The countdown was invisible but palpable. The 5 seconds that would define Michael's challenge were nearly over, and the crowd, along with millions of viewers, could already feel it building. By the end of this part, the stage is fully set for the climactic moment in Part 5, where Michael Jai White will confront the harsh reality of what happens when confidence meets experience, and the first insane, emotionally gripping regret will hit. Michael Jai White had always carried himself with confidence. Every opponent he had ever faced, every fight he had trained for, had taught him that skill, speed, and precision were the keys to victory. But as he faced Steven Seagal, a new reality was sinking in, and it was not an easy one to accept. After several failed attempts to land a decisive strike, Michael began to feel the crushing weight of realization. Every feint, every kick, every punch he had thrown so far had been anticipated, countered, or subtly redirected with minimal effort. Seagal's mastery wasn't flashy. It wasn't about overwhelming force. It was quiet, controlled, and devastatingly effective. The gym was silent. Even the faintest shuffle of feet or whispered comment carried weight. Bystanders' eyes darted between the two men, phones recording every micro-movement, every bead of sweat, every subtle expression. Michael's shoulders tensed, his breathing quickened, and his mind raced. For the first time in the public challenge, he felt a pang of doubt, and not just about the fight, but about himself. He realized something crucial. He had underestimated his opponent. He had misread the calmness in Seagal's demeanor as passivity, thinking that confidence and aggression would carry the day. But calmness, as Michael was learning, was a weapon. It was patience. It was experience. It was a mental trap that had caught him in its web. Michael paused, reassessing his approach. His fists were still up, ready to strike, but hesitation crept in. Every move now felt measured, almost tentative. He had expected the battle to be a display of his dominance. Instead, he was humbled before the eyes of the crowd, and, in many ways, before himself. Seagal stood silently, observing Michael's internal struggle. He didn't need to taunt or provoke. His mere presence, his control, was enough to make Michael second-guess every decision. The calmness, the precision, and the unwavering focus created a psychological pressure that was as intense as any physical strike. Michael's confidence, once towering, had been chipped away in a matter of moments. And in that pause, the split second between thought and action, Michael knew what had happened. He had been humbled, not through brute force, but through mastery, calmness, and experience. It was a lesson in respect, in perspective, and in humility. The audience, both in the gym and watching online, could feel it too. Their minds were locked into the unfolding drama, emotionally invested in every decision, every breath, every micro-expression. This is where the first true emotional engagement arrives for the viewers. Do you think humility comes naturally after being humbled, or does it take practice? Share your opinion. This question works on multiple levels. It forces the audience to reflect on their own experiences of being humbled, making them mentally simulate Michael's struggle. It invites perspective rather than fact-checking, keeping it YouTube safe while boosting comments and engagement. As Michael tried to move again, he felt the crowd's eyes on him, felt the invisible pressure of expectation. Every step forward was calculated. Every punch or kick carried the weight of anticipation, doubt, and the growing awareness that he might not dominate this challenge. The reality of Seagal's mastery had begun to settle in. Experience and calm could overcome confidence and aggression in ways Michael had not anticipated. And then it happened. The first subtle hint of Michael's regret became visible in his expression. A twitch, a slight hesitation, a faltering movement. The audience leaned in instinctively, sensing the shift. The mental and emotional tension was palpable. Michael Jai White, the confident challenger, had realized that in front of Seagal, his usual strategies were insufficient. For the viewers, this moment was electrifying. They weren't just watching a fight. They were witnessing a mental and emotional battle. They were trapped in Michael's realization, feeling the crushing weight of experience against overconfidence. And that feeling, the anticipation, the suspense, the humbling, is exactly what keeps viewers glued to the screen, waiting to see what happens next. The gym was electric. Every eye was glued to the unfolding drama between Michael Jai White and Steven Seagal. Michael, once confident and assured, was now beginning to process the reality of what had just happened. His bold challenge, which he had expected to showcase his skill, was quickly being rewritten by experience, composure, and the quiet authority of a true master. Seagal remained calm, standing like a mountain in the middle of the gym. He hadn't needed to raise his voice, throw a powerful strike, or even make a grand gesture. The lesson had been delivered silently, through mastery, control, and presence. And for Michael, the impact was immediate. The boldness that had carried him forward for years was now colliding with something far deeper, the undeniable authority of experience. The crowd sensed it instantly. Whispers began circulating again, louder this time. "Did you see that?" Michael just froze. Seagal didn't even move, and he's already humbled him. The energy shifted from anticipation to awe. Phones captured every micro-expression, every subtle falter, every pause that spoke louder than words. Michael's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of realization passed over his face. This was the moment where boldness met reality, and the boldness had been humbled within seconds. His stance faltered for the first time, and even his breathing became noticeably uneven. The crowd leaned in, collectively holding their breath, sensing the shift in control. Then came the final recognition. One of the spectators, unable to contain themselves, called out, "Michael, you've met your match." Others laughed nervously. The whispers intensified. He didn't expect it. That 5-second mistake cost him everything. The gym had become a stage for the perfect psychological and emotional trap. Michael's regret wasn't just internal. It was visible, tangible, and contagious. This was the first real payoff for the audience. Viewers watching at home, feeling the tension build over the previous parts, could sense Michael's mental collapse almost as if they were in the room themselves. It was the kind of moment that traps the mind, making people think, how would I react in his shoes? Would I have seen it coming? And just as the tension reached its peak, the engagement question was delivered to the audience. Have you ever seen someone immediately regret a bold move? How did it make you feel? This question is powerful because it draws the viewer into the emotional core of the story. It isn't asking for verification or facts. It asks for personal reflection, a mental simulation of events, and encourages an emotional response. It's completely YouTube safe, while increasing both comment engagement and retention, because viewers mentally replay the situation in their own lives. Michael's regret was now undeniable. His stance softened. Every attempt at dominance had been carefully dismantled by Seagal's stillness and timing. The psychological weight of realization pressed down on him. The audience could see it in his hesitation, the subtle drop in his guard, and the slight widening of his eyes as he recognized the skill and calm he had underestimated. Meanwhile, the crowd around the gym erupted in quiet cheers and audible gasps. Some clapped in awe. Others whispered respect for both fighters. Seagal for his mastery, Michael for his courage to face a legendary opponent. The mix of humility, surprise, and admiration created an almost cinematic climax that gripped everyone in the room, including the viewers watching online. Seagal didn't gloat. He didn't mock. His calm dominance was a lesson in restraint. Michael, on the other hand, was left humbled, processing his instant mistake. The moment highlighted an important lesson. Boldness is powerful, but without respect for experience and mastery, it can backfire almost instantly. The camera angles, the whispered reactions, and the captured expressions all contributed to a moment of universal resonance. Every viewer could feel the tension, empathize with Michael's regret, and mentally place themselves in that 5-second scenario. It was the ultimate combination of physical skill, psychological tension, and emotional payoff. The aftermath, lessons, and viral impact of this unforgettable encounter would be revealed. The moment had passed, but its impact lingered like electricity in the air. Michael Jai White stood quietly, catching his breath, processing what had just occurred. The boldness that had driven him forward moments earlier now felt both humbling and enlightening. The crowd around them was buzzing, not with chaos, but with admiration. They had witnessed something rare, a collision of confidence and mastery, courage and composure, boldness and humility. Steven Seagal remained calm, almost serene. There was no gloating, no unnecessary celebration. His mastery had spoken for itself. That calm authority, that measured skill, had done what words never could. It had humbled an opponent and impressed a crowd simultaneously. The lesson was clear to everyone present. Michael, on the other hand, was visibly processing the encounter. The initial shock of regret was giving way to reflection. He had underestimated his opponent, misjudged the power of calmness, and learned firsthand how experience and control can instantly change the outcome of a challenge. Even in defeat, there was respect for the opponent, for the craft, and for the lesson learned. The crowd started murmuring, then clapping. Some came forward to congratulate Michael for his courage, acknowledging that it took bravery to challenge someone of Seagal's caliber in the first place. Others focused on Seagal, nodding in awe of the masterful control he had displayed. Phones flashed, videos captured the moment, and social media began to buzz within minutes. Clips of the encounter quickly spread online, and millions of viewers around the world began watching, commenting, and sharing their reactions. The viral response was immediate. Comments poured in, praising Michael's courage, admiring Seagal's calm mastery, and discussing the mental and emotional dynamics of the encounter. The story became more than just a fight. It became a lesson in humility, patience, and the importance of respecting experience. People were talking about it everywhere: forums, social media, and even martial arts communities. The message was universal. Boldness is admirable, but composure and mastery can be transformative. For Michael, the viral moment became a mirror. He realized that regret wasn't a failure. It was feedback, a reminder that even the most skilled and confident fighters can learn when faced with true mastery. The encounter reinforced the idea that humility is earned through experience, reflection, and acknowledgement of forces greater than oneself. Meanwhile, Seagal's composure continued to command respect. He didn't need to celebrate or boast. The lesson had already spoken for itself. The world was watching, learning, and reflecting on the subtle, yet powerful dynamics of control versus confidence, calm versus aggression. The encounter had transcended the fight itself. It had become a mental and emotional story, one that would linger in the minds of viewers long after the cameras stopped rolling. And for the audience, the takeaway was clear. Courage and boldness are important, but they must be balanced with respect, observation, and awareness. Even a single misjudgment can lead to regret, but it can also lead to growth, reflection, and inspiration for millions watching. If you've ever underestimated someone or learned a lesson from being humbled, type respect in the comments. Share your story and subscribe for more insane, inspiring martial arts encounters that will blow your mind. The story had reached its conclusion, but the impact lingered. Viewers had experienced tension, suspense, mental engagement, and emotional payoff, all wrapped in one unforgettable narrative. Michael Jai White's boldness met Seagal's calm mastery, and the world watched, learned, and shared in the unforgettable lesson.